Hi, this is Bobby Kimbrough, and welcome to Off the Cuffs. Again, I'm excited to have another guest with me from the school board, Mr. Alex Bohannon. Alex, welcome to Off the Cuffs.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. You know, when we invite guests here, one thing we always like to do is we like for our guests to tell us about them. I've known you for about 4 years now. In previous conversations, I found out who your family was, and so it's a small world. But for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. I was born and raised here in Winston-Salem.
Okay.
I went to Conoke Elementary and then went to Downtown Middle School, which is actually no longer there. They tore that down and made room for 421. And then I graduated from Parkland High School in 2012.
You came out of Parkland?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Wow.
I left and went to Elon University, where I studied political science. Came back home somewhere along the line. I decided to run for school board in 2018 and was unsuccessful the first time, but was appointed last year to fill a vacancy created by Barbara Burke. So I've been on the school board for a little over a year now.
Yeah, so, we've watched you. You're very articulate, very knowledgeable, and it's good that, you are a young voice. You're relatable. Sometimes we get to a place in life that we become unrelatable. We're out of touch. I've watched you in a couple of conversations, and you're very vocal and passionate about what you think. People always talk about the school board and various boards. Kind of explain what the school board is and what they do and what role do they play in our school systems.
Sure. So, just like with every other government official, school boards have been created by our state to oversee our school systems. And so we have a school board here in Forsyth County that's responsible for every single facet of what goes on with our public schools. We hire a superintendent, and he or she is responsible for the day-to-day operations of what goes on. And then we approve a budget. We approve and pass policies. We also approve our strategic plan and the overall strategic direction of our district. And then the superintendent is responsible for implementing.
So how many members are there?
There are 9 members.
So let me ask you a question, right?
Mm-hmm.
This might not be a fair question, but the fair comes in October, so it don't really matter, right? What is fair? So being a product of the school system, graduating from Parkland, and now sitting on the board where you have the ability to affect policies, do you see a difference or a different viewpoint in what schools were, what they are, and what your vision is?
Absolutely. So when I was in school, what's interesting is that I can remember high school where I was student body president at Parkland.
Wow.
And what we used to do was we came to meet with the superintendent once a month, a part of a student leadership advisory committee. And sometimes I think we would go and board members would request to have conversations with students. And so the board at the time then, the types of issues that they were talking about then are certainly a lot different than what's going on now. I think education, the landscape of education has changed dramatically within the past 10 years. Since I've graduated high school. And so there's a fundamental difference just in the work that we're doing, but also I'm the youngest board member.
I know.
Like ever.
You're a baby, but I'm sorry. Yeah. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Our school system has been unified for 58 years. And in that time frame, there hasn't really been a board member that has been as young as I am. So being a product of the millennial generation kind of on the back end where you grew up with the introduction of technology, social media, all of those different kinds of things. The way that we view education and its role is just a little different because our responsibility, I think, has changed from, school systems used to be the place where, all children got their knowledge. That's where they got their knowledge from. But now that we have cell phones, every single child that has one has the potential to access, any kind of knowledge. They see everything.
Right.
So the role of school systems has become equipping children with the ability to contextualize that because at the same time, when you get all this information, it's hard to know what's factual, what's not. You have to have the tools to be able to be a critical thinker and not just to be, literate in terms of being able to read, but to be media literate. You need to have some capability with media literacy because so much is thrown at us now. You really have to know kind of how to process that.
So let me ask you this. So when you sit and you looking at the school system as a whole, right? And you see, how many schools we got?
81.
Wow, 81. And I think I heard you say, or somebody say it's about 50,000, 50-some thousand kids?
53,269.
Wow. So let me ask you this. So when you look at the school systems, there's one school system in Forsyth County, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there's a multitude of schools, right? Do you think that all schools are created equal?
I think all schools, were created with the intention of being equal, but they're all not.
With the intentions. Wow.
But intention and impact are two different things.
True. That's deep. So no matter, why do you say that?
Because,
and I'm asking for a reason. I'm tell you why. Because
right.
a lot of times, I hear in conversations, I don't engage in them, but I hear people make the comment, my school is different from that school or vice versa.
Right.
And, I've seen things and I'll say, okay, I hear them. And, we've had other people on here say, well, I feel this way about this school. I feel that way. And I try to gather my facts and my thoughts before I render. And seeing how that you sit on the board and you're a few years, which is a good thing, removed from the public school system, you see it actually from a bird's eye view. Your view, what I would see, is very accurate. And so what do you think, or why is that?
So I think it has a lot to do with history, right? I think that our schools, just like all government systems, are products of government policies and procedures that have existed for quite some time. I think you can go back to the fact that although schools and public school systems were created for the purpose of educating every single child didn't get the same quality of education from the beginning. When you think about racism in this country and its history, our schools originally were, in our school systems, actually supported and valued the education of white children over black children for quite some time. And then as schools have become more diverse, and also as policies have changed over time, we've really tried to shift that. But a lot of the remnants of those policies still exist. And so we have to be, I think, more intentional about being impactful. And also the other thing is that schools are products of the communities in which they're situated in. So
explain that.
So as an example, let's take Parkland. What Parkland looked like in terms of its student body when it was opened in the early 1960s is completely different from what it looks like now. And that's because back then, Parkland was built on the edge of what was then Winston-Salem. There wasn't a lot of development, out there. Peter Street Parkway. It was more of like a rural school.
Right.
And so now Parkland is one of the most diverse schools in our entire county. It comprises mostly Hispanic children, which is even different than what it was when I was there in 2012, where it was a majority black. Now it's majority Hispanic. And so I say that schools are products of the communities in which they situate in because the southeastern portion of Winston-Salem is predominantly Hispanic.
So if the schools represent the community, right, does that mean that how does that work with like the funding base? How does that work in terms of what this school get versus what that school gets?
Right. So every single school is allocated a certain amount per pupil. And then if your school has a majority of impoverished students, they receive what's called Title I funding, which is additional funding.
So, I mean, people use that term. I know what it means, but a lot of times people don't know that because people use these titles or these acronyms. Right. What does that mean?
Right. And Title I is just one of the many, titles within a federal statute that basically was for education. And so you are designated a Title I school within this district if a certain percentage of your student population falls at a certain level of the poverty line. And so
how many do we have?
Title I schools?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that number.
High schools?
High schools, we have about 2 or 3.
What are they?
Parkland, Carver, North Forsyth. I was trying to think if we have another one. We may have 1 or 2 more, but I know for a fact that Carver, Parkland, and North Forsyth are.
And what makes them a Title I?
It's the percentage of the students who are at the poverty level or below. I think there's a number. There's a specific number. I think it might be they qualify for free or reduced lunch. I think that's the metric we use.
Wow.
But I want to make sure that I say that right. But I think that's what it is.
Wow.
And so what ends up happening there is, so those schools are schools when you have high concentrations of poverty, you can draw a line to the academic performance of the students there. Schools that have higher levels of poverty tend to not do as well on the standardized testing that we use to sort of verify or figure out what the letter grade of that school is. But that's a whole other thing, and the way we test students is a whole separate thing. I think needs to be changed and shifted around.
When you say test them, what do you mean? Like
so
the grade test you're talking about?
Yeah. So every single school has a letter grade. And a lot of times when you hear somebody say this school is a failing school, which that's not language that I use, but they are talking about the letter grade that's assigned to that school. The problem is,
I didn't know.
Well, the problem is the composition of that letter grade only comes for elementary schools and middle schools. It comes mostly from their end of grade testing. The problem is that that's one test on one day for that one student. And the problem with that is we all are human beings. We all go through things. If on that one day you have an off day, or on that one day you have something going on, or what a more real world example of if on that one day you hadn't eaten a whole lot, you're not prepared to come to school and take this long test that's 3 hours long. Those scores are not an accurate reflection of who you are as a student or your capacity to learn or the capacity of the people within those buildings. In high school, it's actually, to me, worse because in high school, that letter grade is comprised of tests from 3 different end of course tests. So Math 1 and Math 3, and then English 2, and then biology. Okay. That's it. And then high school graduation rate is in there a little bit, and then there's some other factors, but it's a very small percentage of what goes on in that building. That is the sort of totality of what we establish, or what the state has decided is how you tell a good school from a bad school. But there are a lot of the quote unquote underperforming schools, or schools that have the letter grade of like a C or a D, or even sometimes an F. There are faculty in that building that are working hard to try to turn those schools around.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of the schools in the county, and you have a lot of great men and women that work in there, right? Doing a phenomenal job. As a matter of fact, it's no secret. We work hand in hand with the school system in a lot of things, and I love the working relation that we have now. And I said now. I love that. I enjoy working with Ms. McManus, and it's a great thing. But I often wonder sometimes when I go to different schools and I see a lot of things, and you just made it real to me. I never knew that they graded them. I never knew a lot of things that you were telling me. I just know that sometimes I see things and I wonder, okay, we're working on it. Mm-hmm. And that's how I always put it in my head. Okay, we're working on it. We're working on it. We're being progressive. We're gonna get there. So I was having a conversation with somebody. They talk about funding, right? So right now, I know people don't like to talk about money, right? Money's really...
I'm okay with talking about money. We can talk about money.
You sure? Okay, great. So I heard that right now funding is at all-time greatness, almost about $1 billion, somewhere close to...
Our budget for 2021 is about $1 billion.
That's $1 billion with a B.
That with a B, but that includes. But see, this is the reality.
Can we get a loan, man? We don't have that kind of.
That's the problem.
Can we get some money?
But see, that's the problem. Is that school systems, most of school system funds are restricted. So
explain that, because a lot of people.
Right.
Make it simple.
Sure. So school systems get their money. All school systems get their money from somewhere else. We are not attacked in the state of North Carolina. We don't tax. We don't decide, anything relative to taxes or the amount of money. We are given the amount of money that we get, and we're told, especially by the state, that you have to use it for specific purposes. Okay. And so even though on paper we have a lot of money, and especially when it comes to this year because we got a lot of federal funds, those federal funds are designated for specific uses. And so people who come and they say, well, you all have all of this money. Why aren't you using all of this money? We can't use that money for everything that we want to use it for. We can't use that money to build schools. We can't use that money to, hire more positions, because that money, the federal money specifically, runs out in 2023. And the purpose of that money was supposed to be used to combat the effects of COVID, not to, buy more buses.
We can't use that money to give the teachers and admin and people a raise?
If you did, you could only do it for 2 years until 2023.
They would appreciate it for 2 years, right?
I don't think so. I think people know because they would appreciate bonuses, which we've done. But I think that
me personally, I can't speak for nobody. I'm not a teacher, but if you came to me and said, "Listen, here's the money we have in 23, we may not be able to do this, but for right now."
Well, so when 2023 rolls around,
we're gonna go back to what we had.
Okay, but are you going to stay or are you going to leave? Are you going to try to try to go somewhere?
I would appreciate you for doing that. So I probably would stay with you. Just my little thought,
Right.
Don't go off of what I say, I'm a little awkward, a little out there sometimes in my thought. You notice I said plain it right rather than explain it right, because in certain parts when you start explaining it, you made it live just now. Right?
I think it would be different if we weren't at the place we were relative to with the education as a profession. So right now, it is hard to hire teachers. We have a lot of vacancies, and the reason
why won't we raise the pay? I think that it's certain people in our community that, as they say, we should go hard for. They are the cornerstones. Silences. They are the cornerstones of everything in our society, and without them, it damages our society. Right? Where would we be in our society without teachers? Right? So why wouldn't we elevate their pay? Why wouldn't we want to? I don't get. Right?
Right.
So I'm not.
Well, that's my sentiment exactly.
Then let's spend the money. If you got $1 billion with a B, right? Can we raise the pay?
No. Well, so we could raise the pay temporarily. But what I'm telling you is, and everything that we get from our staff is that right now there is almost a mass exodus of people from the profession. They're leaving already. Pay is just one of the, and that's across the board, that's nationally. Pay is just one of the many factors, especially in this state, that's a variable in teachers making the decision whether or not to continue to be in education or not. We have to do more, like a longer systemic addressing of the pay has to come from the state, and it needs to come from the state. And the reason why is because local districts and county commissions have done what they can to try to make stuff work with the funding that they have on hand, but it is the state's responsibility to pay teachers. So the state gives us every year, they give us a certain amount of money towards to pay our teachers, and then the county supplements that with funding that they have. If we didn't have that supplemental funding, a starting teacher in this county would make $35,000 a year. That's nothing.
That's insane.
That's nothing. And that's what the state has decided is the salary for a starting teacher. So what county commissions have done across the state, especially ones in the larger urban counties, they have provided funding to supplement the teacher pay so that we can remain competitive.
So let me ask you a question. And I don't know this answer. So is it possible that the board could say, in this county right here, the great county of Forsyth, right, that we're going to be the drum major, we're going to be the leader in terms of setting the benchmark what teachers should be paid? Do we have the capability to do that?
I don't believe we have the capability to do that.
Why not?
I think that because, number one, we don't have sustainable funding.
What if we got it from the county commissioners?
I don't think the county commissioners have it. And that's just based on my assessment.
Okay.
So unless the county commission is going to raise taxes, and unless the community would support the county commissioners raising taxes.
You know what? Me personally, I would be in support of paying more for the teachers to have a raise. I would.
I don't know if every other member of the county would agree with you.
They probably won't. Like I say, I'm a little out there.
Well, but the other thing though is what that does is that kicks the can down the road in terms of allowing the state to shirk its responsibility relative to teachers.
So have you noticed this then? I ain't mean to cut you off, but have you noticed? I can say I've noticed it because I'm old enough to be your father. I have noticed that we have a lot of different, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it charter schools? Like charter schools that are popping up, that are being created. A lot more people going to homeschooling, private schools. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed that? I have, since I came out of high school. That was a long time ago. Right. But since you have been out of high school, have you noticed that?
Yes. I mean, why
do you think
there's been a general increase over time? But the good thing about here is that the increase here has not been as high as it has been elsewhere. And a part of that,
why do you think that?
Well, a part of that is because of the way that we've structured our school systems in terms of like choice. So our school system has.
When you say choice, what that means?
So our school system has a plan in place that is, I will admit and say, is very flawed because what it's done is, in a lot of ways, it's perpetuated segregation. But one of the reasons why the percentage of students that we have in this county in public school is the way it is because when you go to a school in this county, you have options. We don't just tell you are going to this school and you don't have a choice. You have, on the elementary school level, I think you have about 3 or 4 choices. Middle school, you have a few choices. I think 3 choices. In high school, I think there's 1 or 2. But you have an option of going to any high school that you want if you can provide yourself transportation. And then we have magnet schools where we actually will provide transportation for if a student would like to enroll there. that's a little bit different because a lot of school systems tell people that live in their county, this is your school. And so you have to go to that school. And even if they provide you a choice, you know, it might be one or two as opposed to sort of the way that we structured things. But that's not to say that that plan is perfect, because it actually has, to a lot of people, it hasn't given a choice to every single person in our county. And so that's what we have to work on.
Like, for example, right? And I could be wrong again. This is my opinion. I'm entitled to an opinion. So when I came, there was no, you got a Walkertown High now, right?
Yes.
You got a Carver High now, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got a Glen High.
Mm-hmm.
You got an East High, right?
Yep.
You have 4 schools.
All near each other.
Within a mile apart, right?
Something like that.
Something like that, a mile or 2 apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're basically pulling from the same areas. So my question would be to you is any of those schools at capacity?
East Forsyth, I believe he is. Glen High School definitely is. Walkertown High, I don't believe he is. I definitely know Carver is not at capacity. But here's what I'll say about that, and this is me, I'm speaking for me, not on behalf of the board, just what I see as an individual board member. Over the years, when we've made decisions about where to build schools, we have not, I think, kept an eye to sort of the strategic direction of what's happening within our district as a whole. So as an example, Walkertown High and Walkertown Middle were both built within the past, couple of decades, I think. And what that did was, when you build a new school that close to other schools within the area, that siphons, the population from that area.
Right.
And so you have Carver, which is, I think that building has a capacity for about 11 or 1,200. You got them sitting over there at 600.
Wow.
That's one of the things that, we see is that we've chosen to build schools in certain places where the desire may have been there, to build that school or to have that school for a community. But in terms of the strategic direction of our school system and making sure that we're not taking away from other established schools.
Do you think you take away when you do that?
I do, absolutely. When you don't build schools, when you're building schools, based on what I presume to be a desire for, this community wants this school or they need this school here. But we're not really thinking about the populations of students. And also I think perception, and that's just something I'll address. I think Carver High School, and what's interesting is, Carver has this perception that I believe is, to me, unfounded, about, whatever going there. Like people don't want to send their kids to Carver, right? And Parkland is the same way. And I've always had a problem with that, even as a Parkland student. And what ends up happening is you hear people say, well, I don't want my child to go to Parkland or Carver because of XYZ. On that side of town, they have a choice they can send their child to Glen, they can send their child to Walkertown High, or East High. They have other options. And so what that does is, or Atkins is actually,
I forgot about Atkins. Yeah, I forgot about Atkins.
Yeah, Atkins is around the corner too.
That's
right.
5 schools.
You have the potential and the option to send your kid to another school because you have this perception of what goes on at Carver, but actually the great things are happening at Carver High School.
So no matter where I live in the county, if I decide I want my kid to go anywhere in the county, you say based on the choice program, I can send my kid.
If you can provide transportation and there is room at that school, there's a potential you can get your child in that school.
Wow.
And you can, and if the school is a magnet like Parkland for the IB program, we could potentially provide transportation.
Oh, that's interesting. Very interesting.
I mean, because people have, I think everybody has an assigned school that's based on their address. And we our staff is really trying to sort of change this narrative, because what happened previously is, what happens is some schools become super overly populated because, again, everybody wants their child to go to that school. They view that school as like the best school. So, as an example, West and Reagan are our 2 most populous schools within the district. So they
Why
tend
is
to
that?
be.
I thought East was based on
East is up there too. But I think that, when we hear about where kids want to go and, sort of where parents are like, well, I want my child to go here, you mostly hear West and Reagan. And then East comes in sort of after that. But I think that and that's good. I think there's a lot of good things going on in those buildings, but I think that one of the things that we have to do is to really, make sure that we have a narrative that every single school that we have has unique gifts and has unique things going there and can provide
I
your
always
child
thought
with
the North
excellent
was the
instruction.
best. That's where I went to school.
Right.
That's what I always thought.
Right.
But
And
I
West
guess-
is under capacity too.
Really? Well,
Not West. I'm sorry, North.
North. Yeah, I favor that. I guess everybody favors where they came out of high school. That you're kind of partial to that, but I can kind of see what you're saying because a lot of these schools that you just mentioned, I've been in those schools and they're beautiful, and they all look like they got a lot of kids there.
And North is actually a really good example. We have some construction. North is getting some additional work done in our previous bond.
I saw that. I saw that.
So we are for schools, especially
the front of it or something, right?
It is, but also they are North has a magnet program as well, and they are.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, North is really focusing on.
Talking about North Forsyth.
North Forsyth High School. They're really focusing on a lot of things relative to health for students. So you can go there, and there's going to be a whole new kind of suite for their programs that they're working with students who want to go into nursing or things like that.
When did that come about?
I don't know when that was or when that
that's
happened,
strong.
but
that's the first I heard of that.
It's been there for a little bit, I think. But these new facilities are going to really, step up their instruction. I think it's going to be great for that.
So let me ask you this: so, what would you like to see? What's your vision moving forward or down the road when we look at our schools? Because we have a lot of things happening in our schools. And I guess I need to speak to that too for a second. We have a lot of how do I want to say this? We have a lot of some juvenile issues in our schools.
Absolutely.
That I think we need to address, right? So I got to ask you this, right? And, I apologize because you're one of my favorite. I like you. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
It's okay.
Okay, well, good. So how do you feel about metal detectors in school?
So I personally,
this is your personal opinion.
I was just gonna say I don't like metal detectors in school.
Tell me why.
Because I think that number one, I'm a data person. I read.
Okay.
And one of the things that is very clear is that actually metal detectors in school make us feel safer. But at the end of the day, what they do is they just put students in a position to try to sort of shirk those things. So any security process we put in place, if a student wants to break that or get past that, they're going to try to do that. The other piece is that there's also data that suggests that when you militarize a school like that and you put metal detectors permanently in the front of a school, it creates and disrupts the learning environment because students show up to school and it's no longer a school where they feel, it's almost like it's sort of this self-fulfilling prophecy that when we put a metal detector in a school.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think some of the things we had in school disrupt the learning environment?
Absolutely. But the schools are products, again, schools are products of the communities in which they are
situated.
Everything that happens in
the community works its way into our schools, right?
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. So I was up at, one of my boys went to Cash Tech up in Detroit, right? You can't get in that building without going through a metal detector, right?
Right. But that school probably also has one entrance, right?
It has several entrances.
And there's a metal detector at each entrance?
Yeah, and they man them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They got some money then.
Well, I don't know about it. Yeah, I'm sure they got money, to do it. They manned every entrance with that, right?
Because the other piece is that we have schools, particularly our high schools.
With several entrances.
They're campuses.
Yeah, like West. West, there's many entrances to West, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the utility of kind of how do you make that happen when a student there are 5 different buildings and a student can park in the parking lot and go directly to the building.
Well, let me ask you this. So you've been to a basketball game in Wake Forest, Joel?
Not recently.
Okay. Well, they don't call it the Joel no more, do they? Is it the Joel?
I think it's still Lawrence Joel Coliseum. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's probably structured like a concert, like where you have to go.
Yeah, you got to go to the metal detector, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't feel no kind of way when you walk. You've been through the airport. I know you're traveling, man. So you go through you don't think it disrupts the travel, do you? It makes the people feel safer, right?
Right. But the purpose is to travel.
Yeah, and if you wanted to beat the system, you could really go through some elaborate things to beat it, right? But it kind of deters you. It actually does deter people from would-be wanting to do something like that.
Right. But I think, the concert, I think arenas, And airports are a little bit different because the purpose isn't learning. You're going there to do, like, if I go to a concert, I'm going there to enjoy the concert. And so if somebody can, especially given the fact that we've seen, some of the things that happen when it's a bunch of people in one place, and then if there's panic, like, there's sort of residual impacts on that. I think that it would be one thing if the purpose of the buildings in which we're talking about wasn't to learn, and we didn't have actual data to suggest that actually is potentially bad for the learning environment.
So I'm gonna come back to your data in a second.
Yep.
So do you think that do we use metal detectors? I know we do. We use metal detectors at games, right?
Yep.
Football games.
Handheld,
right?
yeah, the handheld.
Handheld.
Mm-hmm.
So if we use them at a football game, and basically the same students at the game than in the classroom, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You don't think it's necessary in the building?
I don't think permanent metal detectors are necessary in a building.
You think the handheld?
I think we need those.
Before they go in the building?
Not every day, no, sir. I think that buildings need to have the ability to use those if they need to. So if there's
how would they know they need them?
If there's an increased possibility of a threat,
okay.
If they do random, they could do it randomly.
All right. I ain't going to unpack that. So I think that my opinion, I could be wrong, this is my personal opinion. I think we're moving in that direction where
we have them in every school.
You're going to have to. At some point, the school board is going to have that uncomfortable conversation about it. We are, because from what I see, we're going to have to. We're going to have to, period. And so that's why I asked you, where we were, where we are in the future.
Right.
Because at some point, we're going to have to look at how we secure our schools, because it's a different time from when I was in school, and even when you were in school.
Right.
Now, time is totally
and I agree with you. I think we certainly need to, and we should have that conversation. But I think a more difficult conversation to have is one in which we are asking ourselves the questions about how do we get here?
Exactly.
And how do we address these systemic issues? Because again,
I
fundamentally believe that schools reflect the communities
Without
that
question.
they are. And so
it's a fact.
Having conversations with, I think, bringing everybody to the table, all the stakeholders to the table to say, what are we doing to address violence within our community? Why is it that a child feels like they have to bring a gun to school to defend themselves?
Exactly.
Because we've had that as a lot of times we hear that students are bringing these weapons to campus because they feel like their lives are at stake, and they feel like they need to defend themselves.
Yeah.
So asking those questions and addressing those is in my opinion, going to take longer. It's going to take a lot more resources to do. I think that we have a lot of quick fixes.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've said this from the beginning, that a lot of social issues that we have in our communities become criminal issues in our school.
Right.
And we have to address those social issues. We have to address all those systemic
But we also
things.
have to address the right now too. And
exactly.
So I hear you saying
exactly.
that, right.
Yeah, we got to address that as well. Yeah, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. And I'm glad that you have an open mind to that, because it's going to take some openness, some forward thinking to address some of these issues. I have really enjoyed talking with you, man. You have a very bright future. You're very articulate. You're young. You're sharp. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to give you the last few words. Anything you want to share, anything you want to ask, anything you want to say is yours to say right now.
Sure. Okay. Well, first I want to say thank you for having me. I appreciate that. But I'm interested to hear your perspective, because since you were sworn in, and even before that, you've been involved and engaged in our schools. Do you see any potential benefit for other elected officials like yourself to engage in schools in a more direct way? I think that's been really beneficial.
You know what I see, right? And this is my personal opinion, right? I really believe this. I was sitting the other day at a forum, and I was looking around the room, and I believe that every part of stakeholders, we're intertwined. I look at it, the analogy that I got is an automobile. You can have a fine automobile, but if the tires are bad, it affects the steering. If the engine is not running right, it affects the car as a whole. So all of us are part of that automobile that makes it or drives what we're trying to do. And we have to all be in sync. We have to be in sync. When you put the car in drive, the brakes can't be on. You ever try driving a car and drive and the parking brakes are on?
Right.
It ain't gonna work, right? And so I think that when I look at it, all of us have to be involved. I don't care where you sit. You have to be a part of the conversation. You have to be a part of the solution in our community because it is layered. All of us are intertwined. Decisions you make affect the community. We're all intertwined in this. And I think, me personally, I think that a lot of times people get in their silos, they're here, without actually coming together, sitting, saying, hey, you know, how do we make this better? And I just believe in, you know, in what I've seen as an elected official in the last coming up on 4 years is that it has to be a collaboration, cooperation with all of us. It has to be. And we have to remove the I from it. It has to be the we, and it has to be our children because like you, I know I've seen you at some of the schools, you know, and you have people, man, that I see make decisions that ain't even been to where the problem is. They making decisions that have never been on site or the places where we're talking about. We're making decisions about something that we don't know nothing about. And it's frightening sometimes to me. It is frightening to me sometimes. You know, people have the power to make those kind of decisions, but have never actually been on site, right? I think that, I'll keep my mouth quiet, but I just think that we need to really focus on what's best for our community, what's best for our children, because what we are now is based on decisions we made yesterday. And what we're going to be tomorrow is going to be based on decisions you make, I make, we make as a community. And the problems that we're having in our community, we're part to blame for that.
Absolutely.
We are. You know, we have some issues that we got to address. And we got to be open about them and address them, because if we don't, Alex, if we don't, you know, it's folk like you, that generation that's going to replace me and all of those other folk, right? You know, and so we've got to start looking at this from that perspective, because if not, we have yet to see the tip of the iceberg with this. We haven't, because you have a generation out there that, well, they don't care about me. They know the issue. They got to see it. You know, so I applaud you for what you do. I applaud you for being a part of the community. I see you out there. Not only do I see you, I hear you. You're a difference maker. And we appreciate that for the work that you do in the community. As always, man, you stop by anytime, anything you need from us as it relates to the school system. We're here for you, because we are truly wanting to be a part of the solution.
I appreciate that.
Of course. Yeah. But anything you need, anytime, stop back by. As always, this is Off the Cuff. I've enjoyed my conversation with Mr. Alex Bohannon. Best wishes to you and your family, and best wishes to the school board. Thank you for stopping by.